I stumbled upon the scariest haunted videos that left me shaking. I never should have opened that door. My heart raced as I clicked on the first video. A dark, grainy image flickered to life on the screen. It was only supposed to be a fun night of ghost hunting with my friends, a laugh at the absurdity of what we thought was fake. But now, it felt like I'd unleashed something. My routine was simple. A quiet apartment, a bowl of popcorn, and my favorite haunted videos playing one after another. But everything changed as loud whispers spilled out of my speakers, the kind that crawled under my skin. The darkness of my room loomed heavier, enveloping me like a suffocating blanket. I tried to turn up the volume, hoping to drown out the unsettling feeling creeping into my mind. But instead, I heard something scratch against the walls of my own reality. Shadows danced around me, flickering in and out of sight, taunting me. My spine chilled as an icy draft swept through the room, making me shiver uncontrollably. I glanced around, half expecting someone or something to be lurking just out of view. A loud crash echoed from my living room, sending adrenaline coursing through my veins. My gut twisted with dread. What was happening? I stumbled toward the noise, my breath shallow. Light from the television cast ghastly silhouettes across the walls as I moved. Every step felt like wading through thick mud, dragging me down. I paused at the doorway, my pulse thrumming in my ears, a whispered warning to turn back. But curiosity gnawed at my mind. I had to know what was happening. Suddenly, a picture frame on the wall fell, shattering the eerie silence. My hands shook, the air tinged with an unnatural chill. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I returned to the flickering screen, where something stirred in the shadows of the video. Was it a face? A watcher? My chest tightened as I realized I couldn't pull my gaze away. A low growl emanated from the depths of the darkness, wrapping around me like a vice grip, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I stood there, frozen, fixated on the horror unfolding before me. The figure emerged from the shadows, gradually becoming clear. It was pale, its eyes sunken and void. My heart pounded harder, a drum in my ears urging me to flee. But my feet barely twitched. Then, the screen went black. My heart skipped, and panic flooded my thoughts. I turned around. A door slammed in my apartment, echoing through the haunting silence. I spun back to the screen, breathless. I was not alone. Not anymore. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness thickened, suffocating what little light remained in the cramped apartment. I stood paralyzed, heart hammering furiously as the echo of the slamming door rippled through the walls. I felt as though the shadows themselves responded to that sound, drawing closer, hungry for attention. The stillness that followed was deafening. But it was then that I noticed the soft crackle did not return to the television like it had before. It remained eerily silent, as if something had chased away the noise. An unshakable dread coursed through my veins, anchoring me in place. I glanced back at the kitchen, half aware that the silence had felt unnatural, a harmful void instead of a calm reprieve. That fracture of stillness ignited an insatiable yearning for movement. I took a hesitant step toward the dining room, where the shadows seemed to slant and curl in ways that stretched the very fabric of reality. I focused my breath, forcing down the rising panic, determined to confront whatever dark presence had invaded my space. As I stepped inside, the room felt heavier, as if layers of sorrow weighed down upon me like a suffocating fog. I noticed the tablia faint imprint remained on the surface. Something had been placed there recently, an object whose peculiar absence now nagged at my mind. An inappropriate thrill skittered down my spine, and I recoiled slightly, glancing cautiously over my shoulder. It was at that moment that a sound slithered into my consciousness, a faint whisper, rising from the dark corners of the room. That I leaned closer, straining to parse the words. The more I surrendered to the sound, the clearer the message became. twisting grotesquely around my thoughts. Find me before it's too late. It beckoned with a desperation that sent shivers down my skin. The very air around me felt electrified. My heart raced faster, an ominous drum echoing through my chest. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice trembling against the unyielding silence. "Nothing. Just the enveloping darkness, clutching at my sanity." Yet the whisper returned, louder this time, and though words were tossed away like leaves in autumn, I felt its urgency clawing at my essence. I spun back towards the living room, seeking solace from the demon that had silently emerged within my depths. But solace was not waiting for me. The television screen flickered back into life, the static fizzing violently before coalescing into a new scene. A long, dimly lit hallway. The atmosphere was thick with a foreboding presence. Shadowy figures shifted in and out of sight, their faces twisted into anguished screams. I could feel their distant cries clawing at my skin, resonating deep enough to take hold of my very soul. When a single flicker revealed a cracked mirror at the end of the hall, I caught my breath. The reflection was distorted, an unseen horror lurking beneath the surface, waiting, watching. And as I focused on the mirror, it cracked further, splintered fragments racing up like scuttling insects to escape the horror contained within. Suddenly, the lights flickered throughout the apartment, plunging me into each looming shadow that birthed horror upon horror. The temperature dropped sharply, fog creeping beneath my breath. In the chaos of the fading light, something flickered in my peripheral vision. Not something, someone. A figure stood just beyond the threshold of the kitchen, its outline shimmering like heat waves, the features hazy and indistinct. Rising panic clawed at my throat. The figure loomed closer, gliding unnaturally as if pulled by strings from another realm. I stepped back to speak, but no words formed. Then came the echoing laughter, low and predatory, vibrating throughout the walls, as if mocking me. "You opened the door," it echoed, a chant pulsating from everywhere and nowhere. "You invited us in." My heart raced into a primal terror as, fingers trembling, I felt the gnarled touch of something cold slip around my wrist. It yanked, dragging me toward the mirror screen where the reflection twisted into a void, an unspeakable darkness that threatened to pull me inside. "Find me," the voice whispered again, urgent this time, echoing in my mind like an omen, eerily familiar. As I fought against the grip of the shadows dragging me toward the mirror, I saw my reflection scream and claw at the glass for escape. And then, without warning, a split in time opened. A flash of horror crashed over me as the mirror shattered, a cacophony of broken glass raining down like a storm, cutting into my skin. But worse was the figure behind me. I caught one final glimpse before everything imploded in blinding shards as a voice, a visceral scream of anguish, pierced my consciousness. "Find me." It exploded outwards, encompassing everything in darkness, swallowing my screams. And then, silence. Hoarser was a daze, slipped by in the suffocating void, where time ceased to exist and reality felt like a tainted dream. I was suspended in darkness, enveloped in an oppressive weight that pressed upon me and stifled any attempt to scream or cry out. The whispers of the fractured mirror reverberated through my mind, each pulse a memory of despair that flickered like a dying bulb. My senses came alive, tinged with an urgency that told me I was not alone. In an overwhelming wash of claustrophobic dread, a sound broke through the shroud of quietness, gentle at first, like the rustle of fabric, but it grew stronger, more purposeful. My breath hitched as I strained to decipher the source in the pitch black. A chill crept over me, icy fingers tracing the edge of my spine. And then, a soft glow emerged in the recesses of the room, illuminating the edges of swirling darkness. What I initially thought was simply a figment of my imagination began taking shape. Silhouette of a child, clutching a faded teddy bear, the creature's head cocked to one side, as if studying me curiously. "Help me," the child whispered, the voice wavering like a candle flickering in the wind. The innocence of the plea was a grotesque contrast against the sheer terror enveloping the air. It felt saturated with malicious intent. I opened my mouth to respond, but no sound emerged. The apparition inched closer, revealing hollow eyes filled with tears that seemed to bleed into the darkness around us. "You promised," it implored, stretching skeletal arms towards me, its fingers elongated and moving unnaturally, as if entreating me to come forward. An unbearable sense of dread welled up within me, and I took a step back instinctively, but it mirrored my movement, advancing with a predatory grace. The shadows around it shimmered like a shroud, and I recalled the whispersa chorus of lost souls beckoning for help, their pleas coiling around my mind. How could I trust this creature? What horror had I awakened? Find me. The voice echoed again, mingling with the child's request, creating a dissonance that shook my resolve. The urge to flee clawed at my insides, but my feet remained cemented to the ground. Adrenaline surged through my veins as I reluctantly dared to reach out, hesitating only for a breath before the air thickened. It caught in my throat. Suddenly, the child's face contorted, twisting grotesquely, the cracks in its porcelain-like skin oozing shadows. I fought back a scream, the ambient darkness shifting, seamlessly giving rise to new terrors. The laughter returned, louder and more sinister, mingling with the echoes of the forgotten souls, becoming a nightmarish melody that wrapped around me like invisible chains. Join us, it sang, an irresistible harmony that encored within the recesses of my mind. You're ours now. As claws of despair wrenched at my heart. The room began to warp around meth walls pulsated, throbbing in rhythms of fear, and shadows siphoned warmth and light. I turned to run, the figure morphing behind me, as the haunted laughter escalated, reverberating off the walls until it drowned out my thoughts. The air grew heavier with regret, and each step away felt both tantalizingly close to escape and agonizingly futile. The exit was just ahead, but the very darkness itself seemed to conspire against me. The path twisted, turned, the exit door morphing into an endless wall of black, folding in on itself. That I, in horror, I turned back towards the spectral child. It loomed larger now, its smile now a stretched rictus, revealing jagged teeth, glimmering with hunger. You can't leave, it hissed, voice layered with hundreds whispering in unison, as hands surged forward from the shadows, grasping and clutching, eager to claim me. No, I cried, fueled by desperation, but it was too late. Everything fell away. The apartment imploded into a cacophony of darkness, and I was torn from the chains of my reality into a realm where laughter and screams reverberated endlessly. As my world collapsed entirely, I fell. Not down, but through. A kaleidoscope of warped moments flashed. Before meth-broken mirror, the hallway, the fears that had haunted me sparked like firecrackers in rapid succession. And just before the abyss swallowed me whole, a pair of ghostly hands took my own, yanking me out of the freefall. Find me. The voice roared again, shaking me to my core. But then, all fell silent, and I found myself standing on a threshold, no longer a child, but rather, looking into a darkened room that reflected nothing. Just a single flickering screen, static crackling like thunder in the distance. The entirety of my being screamed that I had traversed beyond, into something far worse than I could have imagined. And drowning in a palpable void of terror, I heard the laughter return, the unmistakable sound of my own echoing within the shadows. Welcome back. I took a breath, bracing myself against something cold wrapping around my heart with a sinister familiarity. As I turned to confront the darkness that slithered into my spirit, the flickering light revealed something unthinkable humming in the depths. It wasn't over. It had only just begun. Find me, it echoed once more, no longer a plea, but a demand. In that moment of revelation, I understood I was not here to find someone. I was here to be found. And as the shadows whispered sweet promises, I felt myself teetering on the precipice of my own wretched fate, waiting for the next terrifying plunge into the abyss. The room pulsed around me, a living entity soaked in dread. The static hiss from the flickering screen morphed into a haunting lullaby, creating an atmosphere heavy with anticipation. The air thickened, constricting my chest, as if the very walls tightened around me, closing in. Squinting into the bleakness, I could see figures shifting in the periphery, whispers weaving in and out of comprehension. They looked like faces, familiar yet indescribably wrong, staring back at me with hollow eyes, beckoning me forward. Find me, a guttural voice echoed, echoing the demands of the shadows. You're so close. With each beat of my heart, the shadows reached for me, elongating, twisting, and unraveling like tendrils of smoke. I felt an insatiable greed radiating from them, a yearning that seeped into my thoughts and twisted my desire for escape into a desire for understanding. What were these specters? What lay beyond the veil of reality that had grasped me? Panic surged through me, surging like icy water, yet a forbidden curiosity pulled me deeper into the haze. The screen flickered, revealing monstrous vistas, distorted landscapes of malignant tones where the sun bore no warmth, and shadows danced to a macabre rhythm. Each frame captivated me, revealing a life of shadows, secrets slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. Suddenly, a grotesque face morphed into view, grinning wide as its lips cracked and bled droplets of liquid night. "You want to know?" It rasped, voice dripping with malice. It lunged toward the static, sharp claws stretching outward. "Find me before you become part of it." In an instant, the room convulsed, and I was torn from my reverie. Gripping my temple, I realized I was trapped in an endless loop, the shadows teasing me with visions of forgotten memories, woven into a tapestry of nightmarish occurrences. I stumbled backward, crashing against the cold wall, yet my unsettling reality warped, dissolved, and reformed around me. Footsteps approached, echoing in oppressively slow cadence, chilling my spine. They sounded almost alive, accompanied by the rustling of fabric that felt all too tangible. I turned my head, desperate to place the sound. Emerging from the depths of the room, figures materialized, hunched and draped in shrouds that seemed to absorb the very light. Their faces were obscured, each feature an abyss swathed in unending grief and sorrow. "Join us," one hissed, its voice too close and too personal, sending a wave of disgust through me. Its fingers curled, beckoning in an allure I instinctively recognized as danger. "You've been chosen." Images of their lives rushed through my mind, visions of death, betrayal, and misery that filled my soul with an anguish I had never known. I was drowning in their stories. They pulsed around me like a living thing, suffocating and smothering, a cacophony of desolation that manifested itself as a desperate plead at an "Oh, I won't be part of this," I shouted, my voice cracking against the shadows, merging into a sinister chorus of laughter. But their mirth only grew, louder and more frenzied, enveloping me like storm clouds trembling with malice. I turned, frantic, clawing at the air as I demanded freedom that became a whisper in a tempest. Just then, the laughter halted, a singular voice rising above the disquiet. The same child, the one who had first touched my spirit, emerged from the horde. Its eyes flickered like dying stars. "Help me," it wailed, though the nature of its plea was a contrasting tangle of plea and command. "You promised, remember?" Everything around me froze, a sudden stillness where even the shadows backed away as I was drawn back to the moment before. The echoes of forgotten promises resonated deep within me, and a shiver cascaded down my spine. The child smiled bleakly, its visage now a grotesque distortion that seemed to orchestrate the myriad horrors around us. "Let me out, become one of us," it whispered, voice droning low, coaxing my conscience. The shadows closed in, tearing the edges of my reality once more. I fought against the tide, heart racing, but the smooth obsidian surface beneath my feet gave way to something darker, something breathing, something alive. Fear gripped me. I heard a whisper that was all too familiar. "Join us, you're ours," I screamed. But no sound came as dread filled the room, engulfing me. The shadows twisted with palpable anticipation, revealing what fate awaited, an eternity of anguish and revelation. In that moment, I realized my greatest fear. I had become a vessel, unable to discern my own thoughts from the chorus of lost souls. But then, the screen flared to life, bright and brightening, revealing echoes of long-buried lives stitched into the fabric of time. "Act quickly," a voice hissed through gritted teeth. "Find me before I find you." With a final, desperate lunge, I summoned every ounce of strength and dashed toward the flickering light, but the shadows convulsed, grasping at my limbs like predatory beasts. In that singular moment of desperation, I felt my consciousness fracture, fleeting glimpses of wanting to escape, knowing the price of violation too high. And then, just as the phantoms surged forth, I was plunged into darkness again. The echoes of laughter crescendoed, my cries muffled, feasting upon the last remnants of hope. The abyss welcomed me, but I was not alone. I felt fingers graze through the veil of emptiness, pulling me into a new horror I hadn't anticipated. Welcome home. The whisper curled around my soul as visions of cracked mirrors and twisted truths unraveled before me. The last thing I saw was a glimmer of light, a promise of salvation or perhaps a deeper descent. As I plummeted into the maw of endless night, the chilling realization crept in. The hunt had just begun. I was surrounded by pitch black, the weight of the silence more oppressive than any noise could ever be. I scoured the void for familiarity, groping in the darkness, my breath quickening as I tried to align my thoughts with this new reality. But the deeper I delved, the further away clarity seemed to retreat. Within that stifling gloom, I felt a Ripley unseen energy coursing through the air like a thin wire, humming, beckoning. It tugged at me, igniting a flicker of curiosity amid the engulfing dread. I narrowed my focus, straining to catch any whisper against the infinite silence. Was I alone? Or had the shadows merely momentarily receded to grant me this brief, altered perception? Every choice has a consequence. A voice coiled around my consciousness, familiar, but warped like a reflection in a shattered mirror. It throbbed, pulsing like a heartbeat, sending vibrations of terror through my core. I turned instinctively, a primal urge to identify the source, but as I did, I could feel Ida's presence looming behind me, tangible and suffocating. It breathed, each exhale a heated brush against my back that I whipped around, and the air vibrated with a heavy cacophony of whispers spilling out from the depths of the void. They danced and twisted, entangled in rituals of pain and loss. The voices grew louder, forming a chaotic chorus that echoed through my mind. It was a twisted symphony of agony sung in an accent of torment. Beneath their terror-laden melodies, I discerned a thread of something else, a plea for liberation, steeped in desperation, that I squeezed my eyes shut, blocking out the phantoms who sought to claim me. You can't control me. I roared into the dark, my voice a fragile whisper lost amongst the tumult. For a fleeting moment, the convulsion of shadows paused, as if intrigued by my defiance. Then, just as abruptly, they surged forth in a tidal wave of lost souls, faces reaching out to me, eyes dark and empty as they bore the weight of memories I did not own. They clawed at my mind, drawing me deeper into their sea of despair where the boundaries of my identity frayed. You belong with us, they chanted, a mantra that threatened to strip away my essence, to blend me into their eternal story of anguish. Amidst the chaos, an image shimmered that blasted through the storm of horrors surrounding me. A vision of the flickering screen surged to life within my mind's eye, depicting haunting images of distorted reflections, but this time it revealed something new. Among the faces trapped within the glass, one stood out, clear and vibrant. It stared right at me with eyes filled with a knowing terror, somehow more real than the rest. Help me escape this place, it screamed silently, no sound dancing on the air, yet the urgency was palpable. It was not merely the specter of another lost soul. It was the child I had seen before, the one who had beckoned me with those hollow eyes. It knows you. The child's image flickered and faded against the shadows that resumed their dark embrace, that I could feel the pulsing energy shift. An unseen current urged me to reach through the blackness toward the vision of the child. Find me. Its lips formed a soundless plea, and with a single, affirming motion, I stretched my arm toward the entangling shadows that warred against me. A flicker of hope illuminating the abyss. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet crumbled. I felt myself tipping over the edge of an unseen precipice, an overwhelming fear that coiled tighter around my chest with every inch I slid toward the void. The whispering mass grew frantic, screeching in a cacophony of shrieks that stabbed into my psyche, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. You can't turn back. You can only surrender. Join us. The shadows closed in, tendrils grasping desperately at my form, clinging with a ferocity that threatened to tear me apart. No, I shouted into the buzzing dark, as I felt the chill of their hunger prickle against my skin. I was consumed by the sound of rushing wind, a torrent that pulled me toward a surge of swirling shadows spiraling toward an unseen center. And oh, And then came a moment of unreal calm, quieting the tortured cries. The whispers faded momentarily, as if holding their breath, and I could feel the warmth of light and the child's pleas wrapping around me. "This is your chance," it whispered, just as panic ignited anew inside me. The world around me fractured, spiraling into shards of spinning light, each fragment bearing the echoes of countless lives trapped in the incessant cycle of sorrow, lives desperately reaching for someone to bear witness to their plight. I braced myself, knowing that I might not just be fighting for my own life, but for a chance to break the chains binding so many lost souls in misery. As the shadows lunged, threatening to pull me back into their cold embrace, something caught my eye, a flicker shimmering just beyond their grasp. A doorway, a frame seemingly woven from threads of fleeting light. With my heart hammering against my ribs, I dove toward the faint glow. But something sinister lurked beyond, and in that moment of realization, the once silent whispers erupted into a shriek that pierced through my mind. Choosing to leave means choosing to forget everything you learned, everything you loved. Are you ready to face the truth? My body collided with the doorway as monstrous laughter echoed behind me, the chorus of shadows converging, and in that final second, I was engulfed in light. Then, darkness swallowed me whole once more, but this time I felt the heavy weight of chains binding me, unyielding and suffocating. I was not about to find peace. I had merely crossed from one realm of horror into another. And with that realization, the sound of cracking glass resonated through the air. Agency declared as the chains tightened and then broke, dragging me back toward the twisted remnants of reality, where everything I once knew awaited. "What have you done?" A voice hissed, cold as ice, and I felt icy fingers wrapping around my throat, squeezing the breath from my lungs. A shadow lunged toward me, and I gasped, the world erupting into chaos once more. In that final moment, my mind screamed as I fought for my very essence, drenching the room with terror. The sensation of stumbling through a crushing darkness faded slightly, as my senses snapped back into focus. The icy grip around my throat loosened just enough for me to gasp in a breath, the air thick and rancid like decayed memories swirling around me. I became acutely aware of my surroundings, raw, jagged walls encasing me, their surfaces glistening with a slick sheen, reflecting shards of fragmented light. The very atmosphere felt alive, pulsating with a rancid energy born from the veins of tortured souls that haunted these harrowing corridors. "Unlock your fears," the voice murmured low and dripped with malice, echoing off the walls and seeming to seep into my thoughts. "Have you come to play?" With every heartbeat, the sensation of time distorted. A relentless whisper threaded through the air as I turned in a feeble attempt to escape. Each flicker of light was like a siren call, beckoning and retrofitting moisture in the corners of my eyes. I could feel an ominous presence lingering close. Shadows warped, reaching toward me with menacing hands that seemed strangely familiar. Caught in the mirage of my own fears, cast against my memories, that I stumbled forward, my heart pounding loudly enough that I feared the cacophony could summon whatever lay in wait behind the shadows. Desperation surged within me, as the child's image flashed once more in my mind, her expression morphing and shifting in agonized mix of plea and warning. "Find me," it echoed, yet this time the urgency morphed into something sinister, suffused with desperation as another layer of attention drew me deeper into the hall of terror that I pressed on, desperation whispering to me that I had to find her, that somehow she was the key to escaping this nightmare. Still, each step felt like trudging through treacle, the walls absorbing my very resolve as claws scratched at the edges of my sanity. I had become a glutton for horror, lured in by echoes of that malignant voice. The flooring beneath me shifted, a mosaic of images flickering beneath my feet, transgressing from one ghostly visage to another. Faces soaring past, contorting in eternal woe, merging into cyclones of lament that reeked of despair. "Join us," they howled in unison, the walls vibrating with each plea. I turned abruptly, suddenly stricken with the horrifying thought that I was not alone, that something had been watching, waiting, and there at the end of the corridor a figure stood consuming the flickering light. Its silhouette was too elongated, twisting grotesquely in a dance with the shadows. No face emerged from the depths, only an abyss. It was cloaked in a kaleidoscope of horrors, all the souls yearning and reaching, but never quite grasping the slivers of hope tangled in the fabric of silence. Oh, you wish to save her? Or will you take her place? The figure hissed, its voice sharp like the cracking of glass beneath an unwelcome weight. I felt frozen, a pit of despair etching deeper into my stomach as each word coiled around me like a serpent, cutting off the last remnants of courage. No, I croaked hoarsely, forcing myself to step back, but my body felt foreign and unresponsive. I want, with the cruelty of the shadows fracturing around me. I fought to grasp my will, the need to reclaim my thoughts and emotions. I lunged toward a nearby door, just barely visible, urging my body to comply. But just as I reached for the knob, an ice-cold breath whispered against my ear, the scent of desolation choking me, filling my lungs until flames of panic ignited. Your time here is not yet done, the figure crooned, a sickly sweetness weaving through its words, gripping me tighter within its lingering embrace. The child's fate rests in your hands. Sudden clarity struck within my gut. I could feel the bond between us. Somehow, I had to break free, to sever the tether that linked the souls dwelling within this place of torment. No, I won't let you take her. I screamed, me voice raw and wheezy, tearing through the air like the cries of the forsaken. Instinct rippled through me, and in a moment of fervent desperation, I abandoned the door and hurled myself toward the shadows stretching out like claws. I could hear the wailing intensify, clawing at my senses, and the doorway behind me crash shut, a resounding echo that cast me back into the fray of darkness where the figure loomed closer. Suddenly, everything around me shifted again. The voluminous darkness whirled into an upward spiral, pulling me into a chaotic dance, amalgamation of frayed memories and spectral hauntings. There, at the heart of the cyclone, a flicker of silver light emerged, twisting and coiling, pulsating with a heartbeat that was neither mine nor the figure's. With a surge of reckless determination, I lunged for it, every muscle in my body screaming. Before I could reach the light, a twisted hand shot out, grasping my ankle with bone-crushing force. I looked down in horror, and as I locked eyes with it, I was met with the gaping void of anguish, shelves of teeth that gleamed like broken glass, every edge someone had swallowed whole. Perhaps you're the one who will join us after all. The world spun violently, the light within my grasp flickering as brilliance turned into shattering shards, eyes filled with a horrified understanding. Time effaced all certainty. I felt gravity relinquishing its grip, sucking me down toward that yawning chasm of darkness as I screamed, my voice lost in a cacophony consumed by dreadful abandon. And then, beneath it all, the sounds of children laughing, high-pitched, hollow echoes filled the air, drifting from the very depths of horror and swooped down, carrying me into madness. As the laughter enveloped me, it danced through the depths of my soul, blurring the already thin lines between my past and the nightmarish present. The very essence of that sweet, carefree sound mingled with the shrieks of tormented spirits. It resonated within me, pulling at hidden memories, a cruel reminder of playgrounds and innocence lost amidst this whirlwind of terror. The abyss opened wider, a vortex of swirling despair, and I felt my limbs slacken, yielding to the seductive pull of the malevolent presence below. The laughter crescendoed, taking me deeper into the heart of something unnameable, something far more malign than I had dared to comprehend. I grasped for the remains of my sanity, searching desperately for a thread to tether me back to reality. But reality had become a warped mirage, inseparable from my fractured memories, each reflection revealing truths I had long buried. I could see flashes, snippets of faces, lost conversations, and unfulfilled promises. They flickered like dying candles in the midst of a storm, each illuminating their own brand of grief. Then they merged into Oni, little girl with tear-streaked cheeks, her pleas echoing in a haunting dissonance with the sinister laughter. "Help me," she cried, her voice more a whisper of rustling leaves, too soft, too hungry for rescue. The icy tendrils around my ankle tightened painfully, and I gritted my teeth against the despair that threatened to swallow me whole. The skeletal fingers felt like a vice grip, every movement amplifying my growing terror. I clawed against the darkness, trying to dislodge the entity that had a hold on me. In the chaos, I was reminded of a truth I had long buried. Fear, once embraced, becomes a vicious predator. As I recalled the girl's face, something inside me flickered, a flame ignited by resolve that burned fiercely against the dark. Tear-stained eyes could not be forgotten. They demanded justice. They needed a savior, a warrior to pull them from the depths of despair. With newfound strength, I pulled against the grip on my ankle as if it were anchored to some distant realm. The laughter around me fell silent for a heartbeat, replaced with a profound stillness, one that held an acute sense of anticipation, as if waiting for my next move. I could feel the figure's major synapses unravel like coiling snakes, the air thickening with its palpable rage. "Oh, you dare seek her?" It hissed, its voice a murmur of menace that slipped into my ears like fog. Once bound, there is no turning back. With sweat beading down my brow, I dove headfirst into my memories, forcing myself to confront the truth. I had allowed fear to dictate my life for too long. The key to my escape did not simply lie in fleeing. It resided in facing that unfathomable void bearing down upon me, wittingly woven into the tapestry of my existence. "Enough!" I screamed, the echo of my voice rebounding off the walls, igniting sparks of defiance in the vacuous gloom. I felt its strength slackening, that tenuous tether weakening against my surge of purpose semi-determination. "I will not take her place. I will not lose myself to you." In that moment of clarity, I focused on the silver light-up pulsing beacon amidst the chaos. It flickered like a dying star, its radiance energizing my resolve, calling me forth. Despite the clutches of despair clawing at my heart, I dove deeper into the light's pull, driven by the memories of that girl's laughter, of the life I once knew, entangled within an ethereal longing. With one final surge, I flung myself toward the glowing beacon, breaking the grasp of shadows around me. Howling filled the air as if the very darkness bled at my defiance. I burst into the light, where I felt wrapped in warmth, a balm licking at my wounds, enveloped by the whispers of forgotten dreams that coursed through my veins. But the sense of relief was short-lived. As I broke through the veil of light, a startling image crystallized before me, surrounded by flickering candles. Ethereal shapes writhed like apparitions caught in a transcendent dance. The air vibrated, shimmering, as crystalline laughter swirled anew, transformed into a cacophony of echoing cries. In the center of the gathering, the girl stood, her face now twisted into that of malevolence, the shadows coiling around her every move. "You shouldn't have come back," she breathed, the words simulating an inescapable truth. "Now, we shall play, forever." My heart sank as the surrounding specters turned their gazes toward me, eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger, shadows etched against their features. They began to close in, forming a tight circle, edging nearer, their voices buzzing in a ghastly symphony, drowning out the fleeting pulse of hope inside me. Just as a hand reached out, fingers brushing my cheek with icy intent, the ground swelled beneath me, heaving like a living entity rebelling against the weight of despair. The world splintered once again, and I cried out, but what erupted were the deafening echoes of countless voices carried above a treacherous tide of despair. The shadows twisted violently in reaction, suddenly erupting into chaos, and Thena, blinding flash. The ground fell away beneath my feet, and I plummeted into an abyss face to face with a haunting collection of lost souls, each one mirroring my terror, merging into eternal confession. My scream echoed through the darkness, swallowed whole by the malevolence looming above. Darkness engulfed me. I grasped at the oblivion, my last thoughts swirling with the realization that the real horror was only just beginning. The void stretched endlessly, swallowing the light and the voices until there was nothing left but a chilling silence, as insidious as the darkness itself. Gravity ceased to exist, and I felt suspended, caught in the web of my own fears. A whisper of a memory grazed against my consciousness, a child's laughter interlaced with sorrow. Threads of past joys twisted cruelly with present terror. Suddenly, the void pulsated, thrumming like a heartbeat, and I was thrust back into the center of the infernal gathering where the little girl, no longer merely lost but entirely transformed, stood poised to unleash her wrath. The flickering candles burned brighter, their flames dancing as if they were alive, their shadows with theatrical precision casting grotesque forms that twisted into the recesses of my mind. "Welcome back to the playground," she cooed, though no trace of joy ignited the cool syllables. "It's time for our game." Around us, phantoms twisted their incorporeal bodies, each embodying memories I had tried to forget. A woman, her face gaunt with regret, opened her mouth in a scream muffled, as if submerged. A man stood rigid, eyes glazed in suppression of his own torment as he thrashed against the confines of some invisible jail. They sought something from me, pleading in silent wails that clawed at the very fabric of my psyche. "Join us," the girl beckoned, her voice seductive yet laced with malice. "We are all players in this eternal game. But beware," she added, her tone darkening. "Lose, and you may become one of us." The specters whispering around me grew more frantic, their fingers grazing my arms in icy caresses that sent shivers racing from my spine to the tips of my fingers. The very fabric of my being trembled, realizing that they were not mere spectators. They craved to feast upon my fear as though my very existence would add to their endless sorrow. "That I won't play your game," I shrieked back, the confidence in my voice belying the tremors coursing through my limbs. "I refuse." With that statement, I sensed a shift, the atmosphere thickening with dark energy. The phantom girl's face contorted into a mask of rage, her voice rising to a shriek that harmonized with the cacophony of pain surrounding me. Her laughter morphed into heartbreaking wails, and the spirits' faces twisted with despair, their cries merging into a symphony of suffering. The candles flickered violently, and in the moment of disarray, I forced myself to remember that I possessed power beyond my terror. The air grew dense as shadows licked at the edges of my mind, challenging my resolve. But in an unexpected surge, I recalled the girl, the one who had been lost. Something deep within ignited. I cried her name into the spiraling nightmare, feeling its resonance dance between the realms. "Maria?" Instantly, the girl's cruel expression faltered, her ferocity cracking. It was a fleeting moment, but I seized it, rage boiling within me. "I remember you. I won't allow this to consume you, or me." The shadows recoiled slightly, inches from devouring me, as if my declaration had momentarily weakened their stranglehold. They shifted into haunting forms, faces of people I had known yet lost friends, family-wearing expressions of incomprehensible grief. "Spare us," the whispers implored, words hauntingly melodic yet drenched in despair. The girl's eyes burned with fury. "You think you can save her?" she hissed, and with a sudden motion, she lunged forward, hands outstretched to seize Minute just physically, but to consume my very essence. In a wild instinct, I flung my arms UPA bid to shield myself, but at that moment, everything froze. A deafening silence draped over the chaos, wrapping me in a cocoon of anticipation. With her fingers inches from my throat, the world around us twisted into nothingness, shaped by desperation, as though my plea had torn through the fabric of this nightmarish realm. Then, the ground erupted beneath me once more, and I tumbled into colorless void, a stark contrast against the rising storm of shadows closing in. I landed hard, scraping my palms against coarse earth, searching for the silver light that had seemed a distant memory in the horrors I had faced. As I managed to find my footing, I felt the presence of something unearthly shift behind me. A new sound punctured the silencia, deep, guttural growl, vibrating through the air like a thunderous wind, echoing from the shadows coiling around me. I spun on my heel, adrenaline spiking as something far more sinister threatened to surface. In the distance, obscured by the chill of malevolence, a massive shape began to take form. Each exhale, each footfall resonating with unfathomable dread. The darkness stirred violently, as if recognizing its sovereign coming to reclaim its throne. "Playtime isn't over just yet," the girl's voice taunted from the abyss as the darkness congealed closer, promising that the true horror was just beginning. I took a shaky breath, steeling myself against the impending doom, realizing that whatever remained hidden in the shadows was not just hunting for the girl I once knew. It sought my soul in its unrelenting quest for companionship and despair. The world around me trembled, the ground vibrating under the weight of the dark entity emerging from the chaos. Every instinct screamed for me to run, yet my feet remained rooted in place, transfixed by the swirling nightmare before me. The shadows coalesced into the form of something horrific, a towering figure cloaked in darkness, skin shimmering like oil under a ghostly light that flickered from its very essence. "Welcome to my domain," it rumbled, its voice reverberating in the very marrow of my bones, an ancient malevolence that permeated the air. "You wished to save her, didn't you? How noble of you." That I wanted to deny its words, to reject the sinking feeling that I was merely a pawn in this grotesque game. But the truth clawed frantically at my mind. Mariah's fate entwined with mine, held captive in this unholy ground. "Let her go?" I shouted, a fragile attempt to stand against the looming dread that threatened to swallow me whole. But the creature merely laughed, a hollow sound echoing throughout the vast emptiness. "She is part of me now, just as you will be. You don't understand the depths of despair, do you? I will show you." Suddenly, the shadows yanked back with an unseen force, whipping around me in a chaotic wind, and I was yanked toward the creature. Have I become too weak? Is this how it ends, trapped in a torment of my own making? "Not yet," I muttered, steel coursing through my veins, breathing deeply to steady the tempest brewing inside my chest. Straining against the shadows, I remembered the faces of the specters that had pillaged my nightmares, each one with a story, each one begging for release. They were not just echoes of the past. They were remnants of pain that needed acknowledgement. "Your suffering will feed me," the creature grinned, revealing teeth as sharp as shards of glass. "Bring forth your past, so that I might savor every moment as it corrupts you." As the shadows tightened their grip, I fought against them, summoning that tiny ember of defiance, the flicker of light rising within me. "You can't have me. I refuse to be consumed by your darkness." With that cry, a surge surged through me, illuminating a path amid the swirling manifestation of despair. I envisioned Maria, the smiles, the laughter before it all unraveled. The warmth of her spirit drew me outward against the clutches of the creature, conjuring threads of light that intertwined with the darkness, battling the very essence of dread that sought to consume me. Yet, the creature twisted, dark energy flooding its form and launching toward me like a serpentine lash. "Stupid child. Light fades, but darkness endures. It hungers." In a flash, the air crackled as the shadows coiled tighter, and I felt a cold, creeping presence suffocating my spirit. The light began to dim, the connection to Maria trembling in sync with my waning courage. I can't lose her. I can't let this evil consume the last fragments of hope. But in that oppressive moment, I noticed something, a fragment of color weaving through the sepulchral darkness. A familiar light, the same that had once flickered in Mariah's eyes. With all my strength, I reached for it, feeling the warmth growing as the shadows recoiled in agony, screeching like lost souls. "Maria," I cried, pouring everything I had into that single plea. "Find me. Help me." Suddenly, the shadows shuddered. The creature's twisted face contorted in sheer rage, as if my words had twisted the very fabric of reality. A wild gust swept through as Mariah's laughter echoed, mingling with the piercing cries of the damned. I felt a tether snap, the darkness desperate to reclaim what was slipping away. And like the first light of dawn breaking through a relentless night, Mariah's presence surged forth from the shadows, merging with the illuminating tendrils of hope I had summoned. "Together," she shouted, but the entity roared, flooding the air with deep anger that ripped into my flesh, a sound so visceral it seeped into my soul. As the shadows melted away at the edges, a blinding brilliance enveloped us, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. But then, as quickly as it had come, the light fractured, crumbling into countless shards that scattered through the void like stars snuffed out in an instant. The last thing I saw was my hand reaching toward Mariah's, and a fleeting moment of unity before that horrid growl echoed again, permeating my very core. "Your resolve is amusing, but it only serves to prolong the inevitable," the creature rasped. In that terribly intimate moment, the cracks began to unfurl beneath our feet, spiraling into an unseen abyss that threatened to devour everything. As we plummeted, I felt my heart racing, the ground collapsing and shadows swirling, and as I reached for her once more, the scream of damned souls erupted around us. A cold realization washed over me as the edge of consciousness slipped away, the last vestiges of my hope eclipsed by darkness. Then, silence fell, and within that silence came a guttural whisper, cold as ice. "Welcome to the game." The void thrummed, and I felt the weight of fate crash against my spirit, pulling me down deeper into the darkness, a harbinger awaiting the end of an eternal nightmare. I woke with a start, my heart still thunderous in my chest as I realized I was back in my apartment, everything exactly as it had been, just moments before I had opened that cursed door. My body ached, yet there was an eerie stillness that settled over the place, as if the echoes of the past hung in the air like smoke. Glancing around, I noted the flickering television, static spilling out into the silent room. The deep heaviness of dread pulled at my insidious lingering, familiar sense of something having changed that I stumbled to my feet, disoriented but driven by an unsettling need to confirm the reality around me. The walls felt too close, the corners harboring the shadows of my nightmares. A sense of foreboding gripped me as I approached the screen, a sudden chill dancing along my spine. My image flickered back to life, static dissolving painfully into a live feed. But this was not the same as before. The grainy image morphed into a darkened room, a mirror identical to the one I had seen through the endless void. A pulse of recognition sent my heart racing. I could feel it calling me again. The child was there, this time trapped within the broken glass, her eyes wide with fear, yet sparkling as if she held the truth behind the horrors I had only begun to fathom. "Find me," she whispered, but I could feel something else layered beneath a darker, more sinister plea. "Maria," I croaked, reaching forward as if I could touch her through the screen. Her reflection twisted, the corners of her mouth curling into a smile that made my stomach churn. "Not just find me. Save me." The words dripped from her lips, dripping with desperate urgency. A smile full of intimacy and malice intertwined. Suddenly, the screen crackled to life, a horrific whirlpool of memories whirling around, meth laughter of children, whispers of fear, the sounds of despair. It was as though the television had become a portal, pulling me into the abyss of forgotten lives. I felt something shifting inside, an outpouring of past regrets layering themselves over my consciousness, intertwining with the presence I could never escape. But then, just as abruptly, the image flickered, and I found myself staring into a vast expanse where shadows writhed and twisted, distorting time and space like a cascading dream. The air turned dense, thickening with foreboding energies as I felt the sensation of every soul I had encountered, Mariah's essence among them, folding onto itself, creating waves of despair that crashed against my heart. And then, with a sickening clarity, realization struck me. His place was not merely a reflection of my nightmares. It was a culmination of all that I had unleashed. I had not just awakened a horror, I had ignited its source. The shadows warped, and I could hear the voice of the creature that had haunted me through every dark turn. "You believed you could save her?" It taunted, laughter bubbling up from the depths like bile. "You failed to recognize that it was never about her, it was about you, your choices, your fate. Together, we create endless loops of horror. Let her go." I shrieked, every ounce of desperation bubbling over, my voice echoing across the void. But my fears ignited an unstoppable chain reaction, the fabric of reality bent under the weight of my own despair. I was not merely a participant in this horrific game, but the architect of my own ruin. Mariah's pleas spiraled within my mind, merging with the figure I could see distantly at the edge of the abyss. It was her small body suspended amid the chaos. The innocence melted away to reveal something grotesque, a trap waiting for me to fall into its embrace. "You are the key," she whispered, "and I am simply a tool of your darkness." Panic flooded my senses, but beneath it, a creeping realization clawed at my thoughts. The horrific truth of my entanglement with the shadows. Each time I tried to break free, I had merely pulled her deeper into the darkness that was birthed from my own spirit. She was both lost and found, hostage and captive, the embodiment of my own tangled purpose that I pulled away from the screen, desperate to escape. But the shadows surged forward, engulfing me, filling my lungs with despair, robbing me of hope and clarity. "Your essence is ours now," the echoes cried in unison, the air growing dense with the weight of countless souls hungering for release. Then, an image surged within my mind. Mine and Mariah's reflection mirrored in the glass, not just a shattered surface, but a tangible connection, a tether that bound us in grim embrace. In that moment, it became clear the only way to save Maria would be to confront the entity that thrived within me. I had to embrace my own terror and the wretched truth I had tried to ignore. My fear had manifested into something monstrous, twisting innocence into agony. Summoning every ounce of courage, I screamed, "No, I won't let you take her. We will break this cycle." With a furious rage coursing through me, I hurled myself toward the reflection, feeling the cold surface shatter around me as the splinters of light scattered into the abyss, illuminating the truth at last. The shadows recoiled as clarity flooded through me. The creature shrieked in agony as I forced the connection between Maria and me, realizing we were reflections of one another. I could save her only if I allowed the darkness within to break free. The shadows twisted, shrill cries erupting from every direction as I stood my ground, embracing the horror as a part of myself. "Release her!" The maw of darkness roared, but my heart felt light as I forged a new bond with Maria, pulling her image from the depths alongside my own. The looming shadows exploded, the static gripping my soul beginning to weaken, crackling under the intensity of our shared essence, the very core of our plight. With one final grasp, I shattered the last barriers, collapsing the darkness into itself. It imploded around me, every tendril of horror succumbing to the light we had created together, a vortex of abandoned desires that whirled and spiraled, purging the last remnants of fear. And just like that, I felt weightless. My vision blurred, flickering between moments of light and shadows, before pouring into a familiar room. I gasped for air, the scent of musty walls and stale air invigorating my senses. I could finally breathe. Yet, as I collapsed against the worn floor, relief washed over me as the joy of liberation coursed through my veins until a realization cut through the bliss like a knife. The television flickered back to life, and there she was, the girl inside, still trapped, her eyes wide as she pleaded, "Find me." Although it spoke now with a haunting edge, as though her very essence reverberated with anticipation and something darker, I felt a twinge of recognition, a sinister echo within her voice, a truth still hidden beneath layers of fear, a truth that told me not everything had been resolved. For it wasn't just the darkness we needed to fight, but the cyclic nature of what we had unleashed. Could we truly ever break free? The final images from the shadows coalesced, reflections intertwining, spirals locked in a dance before everything faded into chaos once more. The laughter echoed like a chorus, veiled in a melody both familiar and terrifying, as the flickering screen summoned me back into its embrace. "Welcome home," it whispered, my body trembling as I realized the darkness would always linger just beneath the surface, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to answer its call.